Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. One more time. Good evening, everyone. I called the budget workshop meeting to order. Today is January 31st, approximately 6:05 p.m. Madam Clerk, do you have a roll call, please?
Mayor Park,
Here.
Member Kim, Member Simon, Member Luciano. I don't see him.
He's not here.
Member Luciano, can you hear me? I know he's here.
Oh,
Member Luciano, can you hear me?
is he in?
Yeah, he's in.
Okay, we can check it later.
Okay. Member Di Gregorio,
Here?
Member Begets,
Yes.
Member Liang.
Here.
I know I see him in the, he is there. See, he's right here. Oh, hey, you lost him again. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Please all stand for the flag of the salute. Flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, and clerk, would you read the statement of compliance?
Adequate notice of this workshop meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Law, PL 1975, Chapter 231, setting forth the time, date, place, and purpose of this meeting through a legal notice published in the record, posted on the borough website and on the bulletin board.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna a little bit change about our order because actually this time is public portion, but after please present this proposal, and then maybe a lot of people have their own opinion. So we're going to listen about it. Okay, why don't you, Chris, start a presentation, and then we will get the public portion later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your indulgence in allowing me to make this presentation today. Oh, yeah. Turn it on. Okay, let's try it this way. So thank you for your indulgence in allowing me to make this presentation tonight. You should be able to see it if you're in the audience on any of the monitors as well too. I'd like to start off by saying that I've had a couple turns in Inglewood Cliffs and I've enjoyed every single one of them, and I appreciate the opportunity to come back again. I'd like to point out that things have changed since the last time I was here. And if we could go to the next slide, David, I'd like to point out that you have Jerry Barbario coming in. He's a borough administrator with 21 years of municipal experience. I've actually known Jerry, and we've had the opportunity to work on a couple committees together. You have Shoaib. Shoaib's been the chief financial officer. He's got 24 years experience. You have Rich Bussey, who's assistant CFO. He's got 8 years experience in the finance department. You also have a young man in the finance department who started recently, Matthew Leon. And Matthew is really a person of importance and deserves some special recognition on his efforts in putting this PowerPoint presentation together tonight. I think he's an asset to the community, and Jerry and I have talked about that as well too. And then you have me. So I've been a municipal manager for 27 years, and then I was a fiscal monitor for the DCA for 5 years. One of my clients was Patterson, New Jersey. I was their fiscal monitor. So I have a extensive knowledge about large, small, and medium-sized budgets, as does Jerry and Shoaib. So with that, one of the things we need to budget is a clicker. Okay.
Oh, sorry.
So what is a municipal budget?
Cheap clicker.
What is a municipal budget? Well, the first item, it's a planning document. It's not just an accounts document. So the next bullet will show the most important function of the budget is to establish mayor and council fiscal policies. set priorities for services, programs, and municipal objectives. This is how you lay out your game plan. It's just like a corporation would do. This is exactly what you're doing. The next slide is, secondly, it's going to provide funds for the operations and the delivery of services based on your municipal priorities. And then the last thing, and this is the one that most municipalities focus on, is it provides financial control and authority to spend funds through account allocations. When you look at the big sheet, it's really an account allocation. They do have a small section for budget priorities, but very few municipalities look at that. So I always say, if not now, in the near future, start concentrating on the first two bullets, and then you budget your money according to them. The next slide, sir. So snapshot, a lot of people don't understand the size and complexity of even some smaller municipalities. Your total value, this is for all the properties in Inglewood Cliffs and all the commercial, all the residents, is $3.5 billion. You have a population or a customer base of 55,313. You have an annual budget of 21,415,000. You have approximately 70 employees. This is a good sized corporation, which is exactly what a municipality is. It is a corporation under the state of New Jersey. So the next slide, sir. So you also have capital assets. You have $73 million in land that this municipality owns. You have buildings worth almost $10 million. You have vehicle and equipment, which is $7.8 million. So you have total assets of $98 million. And then on top of that, you currently have a bond rating from Moody's and Standards of Poor's of AA2. So that's a fair rating. Okay. So why I do this is to illustrate that this can be a complex process, and you have a lot of responsibility. You are the board of directors for a good-sized corporation. The next thing we have is, one of the things that we do is one of the things I always recommend doing is these are key factors reviewed by the rating Moody's, Standards and Poor's. These are factors that they look at, or trends that they look at. We're going to hit on some of these. Some of these have not had the opportunity to get into it and do all of them. But these show you where you are and where you're going if you continue on the same path. It gives you guidance as to where the municipality is headed. So the next slide, sir. So the key elements of the budget, we're going to go over the revenues first. So the next slide, sir. So you really only have 4 sources of revenues for municipality. You have, right now you have 2023, you had a budgeted 21 million. You got state aid of 732,000. That's low. The average is closer to 7% for municipalities. The difference is you're an affluent community. So the other one is your local receipts is 8.2%. Your fund balance utilized. This is your net. That's what it is. It is your revenues over expenditure. This is what you're netting. It takes 2 years to net because you have to hold back for ongoing expenses that were charged to the previous budget. But this is your net. It's 10.7% of your revenue. This is what you appropriated out of your fund balance. Your property taxes were $16.3 million. You received delinquent taxes of $289,000, only 1.4%. That's one of the lowest percentages I've seen. People in Inglewood Cliffs pay their tax bill. Yes, sir.
Now, the second category, local receipts. What is the substance of that?
Thank you very much. This is court fines. This is clerk's expenses. This is your Board of Health. All of those are considered local receipts. And actually, I have a note on that. I didn't look at my notes, so thank you very much.
Okay, great.
Pretty big, sizable.
8.2% is pretty good. Mhm.
But what about the state aid? You mentioned that we are very low compared with
Well,
other.
I'm gonna say low. The best way to look at it is compare your rate, and I haven't had an opportunity to do this, compare what you're getting to like communities. This is simply based on across the board. If you were to compare it to as other communities with the affluency and the values as Inglewood Cliffs have, that number would probably be more similar, would be more in line with those numbers. Okay, but the average is usually about 7%. Thank you.
Next.
Yes, sir. This is pretty common. The only thing I point out is that 7% for state aid, your fund balance utilized. The rating agencies like to see it closer to 8%, but it is not, you're nowhere out of line. Okay. That's just something that you want to keep looking at as you're going along. And obviously your taxes are your vast majority of receipts. Okay. Next, sir. So this is mostly for the department heads, but there is no money tree. You can't just sit here and shake a tree and find out you found, $500,000 to buy a piece of equipment. It doesn't happen that way. You have to plan for it. So again, this is mostly for the department heads who think there's one growing out back here. Okay. Next, please. State aid has been flat. I was actually surprised that you actually got a little bit of increase this year. And Shoaib, that's due to the state actually started a new program, which was municipal tax relief, I think that was the title. And you got an additional $37,000. That's the first time I've seen that in a while. I've had the pleasure of working in North Carolina and in Massachusetts, and I'm going to forewarn you, wherever you live, if the state needs to balance their budget, they balance it on the backs of the municipalities. Local receipts, local aid starts getting cut. It's easier for them to do that. So while this looks good, just keep in mind going forward that if you went back 10 years ago, you had energy receipts, which were, which were significant. Okay, so next. Your local receipts, it's actually a little bit of a decrease. Now I have to, Shoaib and I are looking into this to see exactly what it is, but it could be a number of factors. It could even be simply something as a permit fee. Construction is a large contributor to local receipts. I think last year you was about $350,000, somewhere right in there for your receipts. So one big year in a construction on a construction compartment, the project can make a number go up. We'll continue to work on that. Next, sir. Now, I do want to point out on your fund balance is in 2000, the objective really is to kind of have this more level. And the reason being is that on another slide, you're going to see the years that you utilize a lot of fund balance, you can drive down the tax rate. But the following year, if that fund balance is not available to you, the tax rate goes up. So a more modest or use of the fund balance would level that out. And an old adage is people don't recall, or your taxpayers don't recall when you reduce the tax rate, but they'll recall the next year when you have to raise it again. Okay. So, so next, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the previous page.
Can you go back, sir?
There you go.
No, I understand the expectation is level, hopefully the peaceful level, no surprise. And what is one of the key reasons is the jump very high for 2023?
In 2023 is you had a couple. Yeah, I know one of them right off the bat, but Shoaib probably would be able to.
What we used in 2023 budget relied on what was generated in 2022. So in 2022, we had a pretty significant increase in what was generated. But that's why when we were balancing the budget, we decided to use a little bit more. And a good rule of thumb is you can conservatively use a surplus as long as you think you are confident that you can regenerate that same number. And we felt after closing out 2022, that just based on appropriation reserves and some other reserves that we're going to cancel, that we'll easily be able to generate that number.
You hit the nail on the head. You want to budget what you can regenerate. So thank you, Shoaib. Next, sir. So this is the same thing. You actually had closed out the year in 2022 with a pretty significant fund balance. You turned around and used a pretty good bit in 2023. The question will be is when you close out your books for 2023, how much of this was replenished? That's what you need to be aware of. Shoaib's in the process of closing out the books. When you get your budget introduction presentation, if I'm still here, we'll have that updated for you. Okay. So regeneration is what you're looking for. Thank you, sir. Now, the net value taxable. This is, if you recall this is all of the properties in the municipality and their values. There's two categories. One is land, which remains fairly constant. The other one is improvements or buildings. If you have a large project and they remove a significant office complex, this number is likely to go down, which then means you cannot generate the same revenues with the same tax rate. Okay, so a couple things will happen though, is that won't last forever. Eventually they'll build on the property and the values will go back up. Secondly, is you have other projects going on that are going to yield increases in net improvements. The reason I bring it up is because this gets overlooked. And this is why we always worked with the planning department, and the planning department would give us a scope of work over the next couple of years so that we knew what improvements, what complexes, what buildings may be coming forward, so you'd have an idea of how this is going up. So the idea is if your NVT goes down, the tax rate that you currently have is not going to generate the revenues. Yeah, Jerry probably remembers this, maybe Shoaib, 08, 7, 08, 9, property values just dropped like a stone. And municipalities that had never raised tax rates were raising tax rates for the first time in a decade. Not to say that it could have been prevented, but some municipalities handled it better than others. Okay, sir. Absolutely.
6A Verizon.
Oh, 6A Verizon. I'm sorry, I skipped over that. It is your franchise tax. That's the value of Verizon's infrastructure within the community. Yeah, so they pay a tax on that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay, Verizon.
Your amount raised by taxes. This is a pretty good fluctuation, and it goes back to what the fund balance was. Rather than keeping your taxes fairly level, you're going up and down a little bit on those. Okay, so there are a lot of reasons a tax rate can come down. Some of them are very good. Some of them you had an expense that went away. Better is you figured out how to do something better, improve upon it, and you don't need to spend the money that you need to use. But then that wouldn't explain why the next year it went up $1 million. Okay. So thank you, David. Your apportionment of the tax rate, people don't realize that you're not only paying for yourselves when they get their tax bill or for the municipality, they're also paying for the schools, the municipality, and the county gets their share. And it all comes in the municipal tax bill. So either one of these parties can raise that tax bill. Even if you're trying to keep it flat, they can raise that bill. So the residents need to be cognizant of what your portion is and what the tax impact is on your tax bill, which is why the tax bills have a little summary on there that shows and says what it is. However, I'd be surprised if any, if more than 5% of the residents even look at the summary. So expenses breakdown. You got to spend money, unfortunately. Okay. So the first. Sorry. So, all right. So next year, the biggest expense is.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanna-
So, Chair.
So you have, again, your appropriations, and the first good sign for the municipality is that your appropriations equaled your revenues. So that's sign one, but things are well. Your statutory expenses, which is primarily pension. There are other couple of elements, but it's primarily pension. This is the pension you pay for the police and your employees upon their retirement. You have health insurance, and we'll show a slide in a little while, but health insurance is a significant expense. Was it 2 years ago? A year into the state health benefits plan. 2 years ago, the state health benefits plan went up. A lot of municipalities got out. I don't know if that was a good plan, a good idea, because if you took a 10-year look at it, state health benefits plan was below most of the competitors. Salary and wages, 6.5 million, excuse me. Debt payment, 2.195, a little bit higher than the rating agencies would like to see. They'd like to see, again, closer to about 8% on that. But when you look at this relative, your total debt relative to your total net NVT, you guys are golden. Okay, so it's not an issue. Your operating expenses is 8.7. That's not unreasonable for a municipality this size. That is everything else outside of this. Okay. Your statutory expenses went down significantly from 2020. We're working on that to give it a little bit more explanation, but it did go down, which is a good thing. But I don't think pension contributions go down when salaries go up, but we'll take a look at that. Okay. Next slide. Your health insurance, this was the blip I was telling you about in 21-22. A significant increase, and you had to raise that. Next, sir. Salary and wages. So first blush, this is a maturing employment base, because a lot of the union contracts have what they call steps. So as you have been with the municipality longer, you go up in steps. So some steps are every year, some are 5 years. So usually when you see this, because your employment numbers have remained the same. So one of two things makes your salary and wages go up. One is that your employment numbers, you've hired more employees, you really haven't. And then the second one is that you're, is that you're getting a maturing employment base, which means that when you get a couple of retirements in some of your key positions, you'll see that drop. So the thing is how does this look next year when you get retirements?
So 6.5 versus 70 people, more or less, 70
Correct.
employee. And the contractor, this is not including this bucket, right? It's something else.
You mean
Third party vendors, contractors.
no, this is just your full and
70
part-time employees.
70 people.
Yes, sir. Yep. Okay. Next, sir. Your debt payment, as I illustrated, is going down. Normally, that's an opportunity. 300,000, we would identify, say, hey, you can take on a little more debt, because the same thing as you retire debt, we'll talk a little bit more about this in the capital, as you retire debt is a good opportunity to start adding debt. Just like in your house, if you pay off your car, well, maybe that's a good time to get another car, unless you pay cash for it. Okay. Thank you, David. Your operating expenses, a little bit of a fluctuation, but fairly constant throughout the years. So that's the operating budget. The one thing that the last time I was here, we spent a lot of time on was the capital budget. And we put put together some pretty good recommendations on the capital budget. However, due to transitions and some of those didn't get implemented, but we're gonna go back over it again. And we're gonna try and get the program back in place. So you have a capital program. A capital program could be, should be 5 years. And Jerry's, I know he's run his municipalities with 5 years, as have I. However, let's just get started. So we're going to be looking at a 3-year program to get this off, to get this going. So we'll review the debt payment schedule like we just talked about, and we'll try to take advantage of payment reductions going forward. But you're in a little bit of a hole. You have a police locker rooms, which has been on the table since 2015, where you have 175,000 appropriated. You went out to bid last year, and your low, and if you throw out an anomalous bid, your lowest bid was 400 and some odd $1,000. You add a inflation factor of 25% for 2 years, which is conservative, but not unreasonable. You're looking at a $550,000 project. So that means you're going to need to fund that. Now, this can be bonded, but I'm just talking dollars here. You also have a commitment on a paving project that you need to pay. You need to pay the vendor. Okay, so, yeah, absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, so called the 3 years program versus 5 years program. Let's say 3 years program. Is it a loading program from this year, or do you have something started from last year to the next year? What is the life cycle of the 3 years?
That's a really good question. It is. We're going to get to a slide that that what you need to do is an amortization schedule, which I think is similar to what you're asking about, but that's not done. What's done is you will bond most of your capital projects. Those capital projects, depending on the type of the project, have a life expectancy. So it will be 5 years, depending on what, up to 20 years. So then you'll see debt payment based on what you're talking about. What's my debt payment in year 1? What's my debt payment in year 2? All the way out to the cycle, to the end of that cycle. But when you see a capital program, you see the actual dollar amount for that piece of equipment or for that capital item. You don't see it spread out over 3 years. You'll see a debt schedule that corresponds with that will take it out 20 years, 5 years, whatever the life of the debt is. Does that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay.
Just to clarify, capital program does not authorize an expenditure. It's just a plan.
Yeah.
In order to accomplish those plans or programs, you will be doing a bond ordinance. It could be fully funded, partially funded, or strictly on debt. So
Yeah, of course. Life cycle, a lot of checkpoints.
There's two things that in order to, there's the capital program, and then there's the capital budget, which what Shoaib just said, which will be an ordinance that you'll have to approve. And that's to expend the money that year, which was one of the issues in 2021 and 22 is you weren't presented a capital ordinance. Part of that is because of the extended period of time it took you to approve the budget. Okay, so you didn't get the opportunity. So you have this, and then you also have your final numbers for the park. Okay, so when you get further down the road, you can find out what that is. But that means that you're already looking at potentially $1 million. Now remember, you're going to bond it, but it's still going to assume some capacity for other projects is the best way for me to put it. Okay. Next, sir. Let's skip this because I'm trying to get information from the JIF, which is your joint insurance fund. That's your insurance carrier.
Let's go back.
Yeah, go back.
Yep.
You need to do an actuarial table. And just like in a business, we're going to take your fixed assets and we're going to land, you don't have to worry about. But building, you got to make an investment in your buildings. You don't have to do it immediately, but you should know through a fixed asset accounting what that should be. Same with your vehicles and equipment. vehicles and equipment, you have two different types. You have vehicles with a life expectancy of say 5 years, and then you got rolling stock with a life expectancy of say 20 years. But in order to put together a proper capital program, you need to know what your depreciation is on these pieces of equipment. So that's one of the things that Jerry's tasked me with while I'm here. Okay. So next, sir, this is your debt amortization schedule. Your biggest opportunity is in 2031. Once that comes along, you'll have about $700,000. And this is your debt service. This is how much you're paying every year. So you'll be able to take a big chunk of that, should you want, and add that and make some capital purchases at that time. You have some nominal amounts to work with over the next couple of years, and we'll try to fit that in. But your big opportunity goes through.
Oops, sorry.
That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to put my DCA hat on. There is no reason for Inglewood Cliffs not to make these deadlines of introducing your budget on 3/29 and your adoption of the budget on 4/30. No reason. No, it will happen if you have the will to make it happen. Okay. So we're starting this, and we're going to work through the process. This is your budget kickoff presentation. Starting next week, we'll start working with the department heads to generate their requests. And then we'll look for a budget introduction somewhere around March 13th. You're required to do it by 3/29. I don't understand the delays. So I would ask that you really work in earnest. Wouldn't it be great to put a gold star on your chest to say we actually got the budget introduced and then we adopted it on 4/30? And honestly, Shoaib will tell you, this is the date, 3/29. You get it introduced, and then you can amend it, and you can amend it. And then if you need to contact the DCA and say, listen, we're still amending the budget, because once you introduce the budget, tell me if I'm incorrect, you can start using those amounts if they're within the 26% for your temporary budgets, correct?
Yeah, but what's the first time?
Yeah, but that's after you get to the, yeah. So the reason being is this will give you, rather than just working off of a temporary budget, you'll know your numbers and what you can do. Shoaib will know the numbers. Jerry will know the numbers. So if somebody wants to make a purchase of a large item, they're not going to miss a step because they didn't know that it had to be budgeted first in order for an appropriation and the funds to be available. Okay, so any questions on that? That's my DCA hat. I'm here, yeah. So the one thing that Shoaib did this year, and I think this is going to be good, is we now have an average expended for 2002 and 2003. So you're not just looking at what was appropriated in 2023 and in 2000 and expended in 2023. You now can go back a little further and know what the average. Again, once you get another year, go 3 years. Yeah, I don't think you need to go 5, but go 3 years at least. And what it does is it levels out the expenses. So a department can have a huge, just take gasoline. Gasoline went up to $4 a gallon. If you took what you spent in 2023 or 22 on gasoline and just rolled it over to 2023, you don't necessarily have to do that because now gasoline has gone down. You don't necessarily want to cut it to the bone, but it gives you more information to make decisions. Gasoline, petroleum products, or an asphalt. When asphalt goes up, you pave less roads, or you pay more for your asphalt. It all rolls together. Next, sir. These are all the.
Okay. Okay. Oops, I got to go back one.
All right.
There we go.
and the next. You can just look at these these are all the departments and all the averaged expenditures. Okay. So this is a slide I do my best to end on. Because again, your residents don't necessarily know what it costs to operate in Inglewood Cliffs. So if you'll scroll through general government, and this is per parcel, you got 2,200 parcels. So general government costs per parcel $1.43. Okay, that's a day. $1.43 a day is what it costs the residents. 24-hour police protection cost your residents $6.25 a day. DPW services, $1.72 a day. Parks and recreation, a quarter a day. A quarter a day to go to these parks and to go to the programs. Fire protection, a quarter a day. You got a volunteer fire department, a quarter a day to make sure that somebody comes out to your house and put your house on and put your house out if it catches on fire. For council members, that's if you're on the good side of the fire department. Garbage collection, 76 cents a day. Municipal debt service, $2.71 for a daily total of $13.40, which is the next one, less than you probably paid for your lunch today. Okay.
Expensive sometimes.
Less.
More expensive. You're right.
Maybe I just smile on. So I think this is telling, you know, because you're providing a lot of services. If you compare yourself to other service providers in this big network of everybody getting services, I think municipalities do a good job. I don't think they pat themselves on the back enough. I don't think they explain what they're doing as well as they should, but I think they do a good job. So the next step is any questions, comments, or anything I need to move forward on.
Any more question? Okay, thank you. I appreciate Chris and your team and the CFO and administrator, everybody did a really good job. I really appreciate. You know, I hope we have to, you know, adopt the, you know, the before the April 30 you mentioned over there. I hope so. I don't know. March 29th and that is our, you know, hope, and that is our goal. So try, yeah,
Right.
try our best. Okay, people to move to the public portion. Anybody, any comment or any question? Okay, please.
But more detail. This was a very broad overview.
Oh.
As we get into getting the actual numbers, you will see the details on each department level, where the salaries are going, where the health benefits are going, what the debt services are. So you'll get those details. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to me, or, you know, we'll have more budget meetings where we can discuss those departments in detail.
So
Yeah.
Shoaib's exactly right. This is the introduction, or not the introduction. This is an initial presentation. When you get your budget introduced, all of these slides will be updated to reflect 2024 budgeted and any closeout that we have as well too. And you'll get, of course, you'll get the detail sheets that you had as well.
Question. Some logistic questions here. So let's see, 2023, last year, when you started and when you finished from the whole budgeting cycle.
So 2023 was my first budget year. I started here in September 2022. And prior to me. So prior to me, you know, I started in September 2022. Prior to me getting here, they were, you know, rotating door of CFOs. There was an outside consulting firm that was helping out. So I basically focused on starting and establishing 2023. So 2022 was continued to be supported by the consultants. It took us a while to close out 2022, which was the primary reason why the budget process started out late, and it didn't follow a typical pattern, which was also a lot of complaints from the council. that they didn't have the regular workshop, they didn't have the budget meetings, and
Yeah.
so I basically put together the first draft of the budget based on the little bit of information that I had. I didn't have institutional knowledge, so I was relying on other factors. So I did the best I could. I presented it to the council, and that's when the concerns started coming in. But we didn't introduce the budget, I think, until June. June is when we introduced it, and we adopted it in August or September, I believe. So it was a good 3-month process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now that I have, 1 year under my belt, I know the institutional knowledge, know how the departments work. So I don't expect that. The first step for me is to close out the year and generate what's called an unaudited financial statement, which I expect to have it done in the next 2 weeks. So after that is when I can really put a good first draft of the budget and circulate it to the mayor and council, get your input, and then you can give me direction as to where you want that budget to go before it's presented to everybody for introduction.
Well,
And of course, the department head meetings will be in between.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
Yes.
You can grab the other microphone.
Oh.
Wait, yeah, just turn it
So,
on.
Shoaib's right, is that a number of the budget items are inputted by the CFO. Your health insurance, your pension liability, that's inputted by the CFO. The department requests come through meeting with the departments and then a recommendation to the mayor and council at that time. So, just want to clarify that. You'll see what the departments are.
And there's the portion of the budget that really the mayor and council control is very small, because when you factor out the salaries and wages, which honestly you have no control over, the statutory items, the pension, the health benefits, the debt service, it doesn't really leave you much to play around with. Those numbers are dictated.
That's bullet number 3. And he's right about this year, but bullets 1 and 2, where you're starting to plan and put your objectives in, can impact some of those bigger numbers. We've had this conversation, and I think, but you're not it takes time to format what you want to do, how many employees you want here. And Jerry's very adept at that. So he's gonna.
Okay, so back to logistic questions for 2024 this year.
Right.
What do we do? Yeah, so what kind of communication platform?
So
we
my
have?
communication will be once we have our
Schedule-wise.
departmental head meetings, and once you have a recommendation from the administrator after we have met with the department heads, that will give me an opportunity to close out the year. You will start getting more communication from me as a CFO, the full council, as to how you want to meet, what, it's not the thing is fixed in stone. So you'll dictate to me what's best for you, what works. I'll give you an outline of how it has worked, and then we can come up with a plan.
So maybe March should.
It will be, I think it will probably be towards the end of February, I would say.
Yeah, I think if you go back to if you go back to the calendar, let me see what we
Yep, I
got.
will.
Go back to.
Absolutely.
Actually, it's the department head
Actually, we. this-
that have to rely on them,
Yeah,
because all the rest is fixed.
all that is correct.
All the-
Calendar was,
the shit
Yeah.
Should be online.
And Mayor, if I can make a comment, there is a finance committee, so the finance committee can get involved in some of the interim budget preparation.
Yes.
Or we just set up special meetings and have. meetings like this.
No,
It's really up to however you want to do it.
yeah, I want to know about that's the committee. I'm gonna give a full authority. Then we can later on we can discuss about that. So I'm consuming. I don't want to do that for whole yeah, that is. Yeah, I have experienced too many people involved in over there. That's a waste time, and they don't get the decision quickly. Always delayed. So I'm going to give all authority to the financial committee, and then they can report to the council. That's the best way. Yeah.
And then all the information that I'm sending out, I'll still continue to send it to the full mayor and council, so they are.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you can share it, but that is the budget meeting, and then that procedure wise, the committee, they have always, especially Mr. Ji Liang has a lot of experience in this area, so I trust him, so that'll be okay.
start getting your department submissions in. Yeah. Give us a first blush at it. Yep. Send it to the committee. You can look at it with, Jerry could make recommendations of what departments he thinks should come in. Go Abe obviously would be there. If I'm available, I'll be there as well too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good approach. And you know, they ask about budgets, don't ask me a lot. I really enjoy it. The point is that, and I don't say this lightly, but it's really not, so we make a good point, it's really not rocket science. You got so much to work with. You need decisions to be made. Oh, sorry. You need decisions to be made. And then you approve it. It can be done. It can be done. A lot of municipalities get it done before 3/29. Okay.
Yeah, we've closed September, sure.
No,
Yeah.
when you get a letter from the DCA, when the director sends you a letter saying that they're gonna start fining you $25 a day or whatever it is. Yeah, and that was August 29th. So yeah, that's not good form, as they say.
I think this is, if I may say, I think this is something that the whole council can agree on and say yes. And there's no reason not to. So I hope that it'll go in on time and thank you. This was extremely informative. You've made something simple that maybe some people don't think is that simple. And it was very understandable. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But really, Joey and Matthew Neon deserve a lot of the credit. They do it. I look it over. I make some suggestions, and then they say, "Well, you got to present."
Okay, give a big hand for that.
Next week, when we see with the department head, we'll bring tissues for them.
I did. I'm going to be very, very quick about it. So we always had these big department head meetings. We'd bring everybody in, all the department heads, and then we do their presentation. And one year, I used to do these little gag gifts and stuff, but one year I actually put tissues on all of their chairs.
Too sad, that's too happy.
So sad. So sad.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
okay, let's move on next agenda. Okay, actually, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. We're gonna can I have a motion to open public comment? Please note, there will be a 5-minute public comment pertaining to the only budget matters. Anyone have any question? Yes, please come out and state your name and your address, please.
Hold on. I'll take care. But you have my battery. You have the backup.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Karen Geiger, 270 Alfred. I just want to add my thanks as a member of the public to you, Mr. Ratz, for presenting this to us. It brought me back to the days when I used to teach government budgeting. And so I remember some of these slides, especially the first one about the planning tool, which is very wise. My question that I had on the financial statement you've answered, but I did have a question on the 700,000, which is the money that apparently is due to a contractor, which was supposed to have been paid last year, but the monies were not present to pay it. I guess that's as I understand it as a member of the public. And I'd like to know how you're going to approach that going forward, if you have a plan for that.
So we are presenting an amendment to the temporary budget at the next meeting to rectify this situation with the payment to the contractor. On a supplement to that, we are working on a bond ordinance that will appropriate that funding, so the temporary budget doesn't have to take a hit when it actually gets introduced. As far as preventing it from happening in the future, I have presented some forms to the borough attorney and the clerk's office. Where certification of funds will be required for any contract awards regardless of dollar amount. I have also asked, since I am a part-time CFO, to be more involved and be communicated with whenever an expenditure is being made, regardless of the dollar amount or regardless of the funding source. So hopefully, with those changes in place and as long as they are being adhered to, we should not have this issue again.
Okay, what do you do? I assume you have to contact your new bond counsel to find out whether it's appropriate to bond for an expenditure that has already taken place. Because this is not a planning tool that you're bonding for future work. The work has been done. The contract has been awarded, and now you just have a deficit. So I hope you will have in writing whatever the bond council states on that, so the municipality can proceed accordingly and that this won't happen again. I noticed in looking at selected vouchers that I was surprised that none of them had approvals from any staff in the borough certifying that they were okay to pay. And these are vouchers from last year to contractors. So I think a lot of procedures are necessary to close some loopholes in the system. The other item I have is a question about the parks. As you know, I'm a member of the Parks Committee, and we are at this point looking at introducing a new bond ordinance to the council because the last bond ordinance approval that was accepted by the council, one, is insufficient for the project approved by the council in terms of dollars, and two, there is a change in scope from the original bond ordinance approval that people thought they might have been able to deal with, although my personal bond counsel expert told me that was never the case, and he was correct. So I'd like to know, when do you need the numbers and when do you expect to have that presentation, and how are you providing for the 5%? Because there have been various charges, once again, contracts approved with nothing to charge them to, like the 380,000 for Boswell, the 140,000 for Hippolyte the same year, and those two contracts alone are $500,000. They are properly bondable, and yet they're not. I don't know how they're paid or what they're being paid out of. So I'd like some answer on that. And that's all I have.
Yeah, because just that.
So currently,
I want to ask one question so I don't forget it. I'm sorry. In the future, might I request that what you have available to the public be in a full page size? I'm getting a little old, but even when I put on my glasses, I can't read the numbers on this presentation. So doing it in full page size would be appreciated.
Okay.
Thanks.
any color?
I don't need color. Full page.
Just press it in, that's
Thank
it.
you.
So if I can answer.
Yes.
So currently there is a bond ordinance in place that was adopted, I believe, at the end of 2022. It is for $5 million. It does cover the project that was outlined. So any preliminary expenses, whether it's engineering, surveying, any of those sort, the contract that was referred to for $380,000 to Boswell, those are being charged to that bond ordinance until we decide which route we are taking, whether we are supplementing the existing ordinance or canceling the existing ordinance and restarting a new one. We will continue charging all preliminary expenses to that bond ordinance. So it is fully funded, and that it is fully funded, those contracts that were awarded by the council. We did not issue the bonds, but there's a bond ordinance in place which authorizes you to charge. Right now, that there's no need to issue the bonds because there is no need for the immediate cash. So you can have a bond ordinance and not go out for a bond sale immediately after issuing the bond ordinance. No, we are charging it to a bond ordinance, which gives you the authorization to charge. It's an appropriation. We haven't funded that bond ordinance yet.
question regarding $700,000.
Yes.
I know Mr. Geiger, raised the question if we might get it on. Because we want to charge for something that was done before. Did you think, if we're not gonna get it on, where we're gonna pay this, contractor the $700,000?
We've talked to bond counsel on this as well too. So you can anticipate bonding action in later in the spring. So he's aware of it, and if you wanted a writing, we could probably approach him about that, but he's aware of what we're doing.
So.
Well, we can specifically ask him that question, but he knows that it was done. He knows it was done in the past. Okay. The other thing too, real quickly about bond ordinances, and it's really nice to know, to come across somebody in the audience who knows what they're talking about. So I appreciate that very much. Is not to say that not all of the audience knows what they're talking about. But the point is that you really don't formalize the bonds and the bond payments until completion of the project. You have authorization, as Shoaib was talking about, but you don't really bond it because you don't know what the final amount of that project's gonna be. So that's when you essentially fix your bond schedule and your bond payments.
Okay, yes, come up, please.
Thank you. I'm Marty Geiger. I live at 270 Alfred Street with Mrs. Geiger. I would like to request, maybe I haven't looked in the right place, but I think the council's minutes as shown on the website should include or have as attachments the resolutions adopted at a particular meeting. They're often attached as minutes to the agenda, proposed agenda, but I don't see them attached to the actual minutes of a meeting. Maybe you could explain.
All resolutions are separate. All resolution for the whole year is done separately. So if you go onto the website and you look under government, in government, you'll see a little on the side, it says resolutions. Click on resolution and all the resolutions are in.
It's not connected to that.
It's not, no, it's a whole separate.
They're not linked.
Real quick, I know that this is kind of an informal meeting and we only have some of our, most dedicated residents here. But I'm gonna put this on the record just so that way when it's another meeting and there's more people and maybe it's a little less laid back and conversational. I please implore everybody on the dais that it's public comment, because otherwise we can't track the time. In other words, if, at what point of Mr. Geiger's 5 minutes is being allocated to us answering questions, and then when we want to cut him off later, he gets angry because we said your 5 minutes is up. I can't track it. So I'm just this is informal. It's not confrontational tonight, but who knows what the next meeting is. And when I yell, I don't want people saying I'm being
No problem.
inconsistent with the stuff. So questions, finish your 5 minutes.
As
We
to
can
the-
answer.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
The next one.
As to the preparation of the capital plan, as discussed, you mentioned you're going to speak to department heads. Prior to that, we've heard from various people at the public meetings, particularly somebody from the fire department who spoke of the need for authorizing as much as $2 million for a new fire truck. We've heard from a former borough administrator who outlined a whole panoply, a whole list of improvements that were necessary at Borough Hall and elsewhere. When you say you're going to speak to the department heads, they just putting forth a wish list? Because that element, that part of the budget, capital, seems to be probably the part that requires the most discretion, or gives the most discretion to the members of the mayor and council. And as opposed to just handing them a list, it's got to be vetted. It's got to be, got to plan amortization for whatever it is. In the case of the fire department fire truck, which I have been in favor of, they say that it takes 3 or 4 years for it to be delivered. So I suppose, though, they cannot go ahead and order it unless there's a bond ordinance in place, and you can't adopt a bond ordinance unless you provide for at least 5% of the cost in the capital budget. So I just want a clarification of that. And one final thing. I don't know that it's clear that the council has the authority to provide for certain capital expenses funded in the operating budget. Am I mistaken about that?
Typically, if you don't mind, I've always had the general rule, if it's $5,000 to 5,000 or less than 5 years in life, it's an operating expense.
Okay.
But at the same time, you can, a typical one is police vehicles. Police vehicles in a lot of municipalities are under lease purchase. And at the end of the lease, it's a, you buy them out, but it's still tax dollar. So you just have to balance what makes the best sense within those. But there's a lot of things in a lot of municipalities that get told in capital. I think you're aware it had no business.
Thank you. Thank you very much also for the great presentation. Thank you.
The wish list. Right? So for us, I never categorized it as a certain list per se. What I do with the department heads is I go over their entire operation before we start talking about the budget. Because there are potentially operational efficiencies that we can discuss during that budget time. It's probably the only time that we're actually going to discuss operational efficiencies, right? So that's how I try to lead in to the department head meetings. They all have equipment or items that they wish they had purchased 1 year, 2 years, 5 years ago, whatever the case may be. But in the case of like a fire truck, right? The municipality won't be hurt. They won't be buying or paying that fire truck until it actually hits the ground, right? So 3, 4 years down the line, those are the kinds of things that need to be discussed at the council level, because the council needs to be aware of those items. So a bond ordinance for $2 million for a fire truck isn't necessarily payment, January 1, 2025, right? So those kinds of things. But I approach things as from an operational management standpoint all the time, and that's really what kind of drives the budget, their budget. And now that Shoaib is showing us, last year and year before, as far as the trends, I can identify items that maybe weren't necessary. Or why is it? And department head's philosophy is, if I don't ask for it, if I give it up, I'll never get it back, and that's not the case. That's how I try.
It sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
If I just might add, or that you can keep in mind, one of the capital outlay items that for some reason hasn't been addressed, as far as I know, was the replacement or upgrading of the leaf vacuum truck. In this past year, they used a plow and a dump truck to pick up leaves in the fall, which caused some damage to the streets and was not a particularly efficient way of managing the leaves. I don't know why. I have no idea what the engineering.
There is a discussion that I have to have with DPW regarding efficiency and equipment repair and those kinds of things.
Right.
But I'm familiar with both operations.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Okay, anyone else?
I do
and-
at some point have a quick question,
Mhm.
but if there's anyone from the public, they
Yeah,
certainly
okay,
go. ahead.
okay.
No hands up.
Okay, then, I wanted to make a motion to close public portion.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mayor,
you-
I just want to, just real quick, Mayor, I just, when you opened it, I think you indicated it was for budget comments. I just want to make sure that if there was anybody who had comments outside of the budget, it's still a public meeting, so we still have to,
Yeah, okay, Mary will say, okay. hand
yeah,
up.
so
Mary will say,
I think Mr. and Mrs. Geiger may have had their comments, but if they had something outside the budget.
yes, thank you, Mary. Okay.
Yeah,
Hi,
yes.
Mary.
Thank you, Mayor Park. I'm sorry, I got on here late. Unfortunately, I tried to use the link that was on the calendar, but the link that was on the calendar was for apparently an older meeting. And I had checked yesterday looking for the agenda, and I didn't see one. So I thought that was the link. So thank you, Mrs. Begets, for informing me that it was on the agenda, because I really spent a bit of time trying to get in and couldn't. I had spoken today to the borough administrator regarding some of the needs for the senior citizens, for the senior citizen building and the membership. And I hope that you take into consideration when you're doing the budget this year, that very little is spent on the seniors in Englewood Cliffs. We do not have a bus, for transportation like all the neighboring towns have. And that's an item that I have been asking for a decade. I bring it up. I gave links to different grants, but nothing ever materialized. And when the seniors go on a trip, we have to rent a charter bus, and it's very expensive. It's like they're over $1,300 for the event for the day. So considering that the town gives us a budget of $1,000 a month, it doesn't go as far as it should. So I would like to ask you to please consider a 26-passenger minibus for the town, and the other organizations in the town could use it. And you could have somebody from the DPW get a bus driver's license that could drive it. That's what they do in other towns. So that would be a major importance for the seniors. And, you know, we're not using the fields. We're not playing baseball. We're not playing basketball. We don't have children in the schools. So it's a small ask for the seniors. And a lot of them are very, very elderly, and it would be something that would be appreciated. Plus, I also went over many things with Mr. Barbario today, and I'm sure he will relay those to you. But I do appreciate the time to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Anyone else? No one, right? Okay, then may I have a motion to close
I
public?
just had
comment?
one
Public
question,
Okay.
which I should have asked before. It wasn't.
Close public comment.
Oh,
Public
yes,
comment, then we
second,
can discuss.
Yes.
closed,
And
Go.
any second?
second.
Okay.
Um,
Roll in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
roads,
Thank you.
my question is about roads and all of the work that PSC&G is doing at this point. And it seems like they're going to be paving, I would imagine they're going to be paving a good portion of the roads in that they're doing the work on, and that's a lot of roads. Could there be some savings incurred in perhaps not paving unless there's a road that is really urgent to pave for 1 year, since they're going to be doing all that paving and paving roads that really do need paving, like Floyd and others?
Right, so some of the work in the some of the already.
Can't hear you.
Typically,
Is that mic on? You should be able to hear. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So the other half of the road would be for us to discuss, to
Mhm.
complete that road. And then, I'm not sure if I understand it, to wait for 1 year. We definitely have to
Well-
wait until the work is complete, that's for sure.
Right, but other roads, in other words, I would imagine every year there's a certain amount of of expenses that we are outlaying for roads. So my question was, can we reduce that or even eliminate that for 1 year, since there are going to be a lot of roads that are going to be paved anyway? That's, yeah. Okay, thank you.
David, one thing that look at, I don't know the answer, is you can look at your road ordinance with regard to when utilities are required to repave. So in other words, if it's a 20-year-old road and PSE&G comes in,
Mhm.
they're only responsible for half the road, as Jerry mentioned. But
Mhm.
let's say you've just paved the road last year, and
Mhm.
now they come in and they say, well, we need to reopen it. You can put restrictions to make sure that they say, no, they just can't. Or if they do, they have to redo the whole road. And
Mhm.
you can have some limitations and, how long you kind of put out that moratorium.
Mhm.
So that's one you know, you can take, I don't know what your ordinance is in terms of how restrictive or how aggressive it is on,
Mhm.
on doing that. And, the utilities will also sometimes work with you to be able to do things like, I don't know, let's say they're responsible for paving half of a road. And you don't really want to leave it half paved, half not, but maybe the other side of the road is really not that bad or it's getting there. But so what do? Do you pave the other half of the road, even though it doesn't really need it because you don't want a half a road done? Or do you not? But what sometimes they can do is work out something where they say, okay, listen, don't touch, we know you have to do half this road, but we'd rather you just not just fill in your trench, but then take that money and they'll give you a credit essentially, and you can reallocate it to other roads. So you can say, yeah, leave that one for now. We'll come back to it in 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
We'll live with the repaved trench, but we'd rather have that money taken to a road that's a higher priority for us that they're not touching. And there's things that you can work with. And it starts with the ordinance about the road opening and
Okay.
what that does. And then it's up to your administrative team to sit down with them. And some utilities are easier to work with than others. And, you know, that's a whole other discussion, but.
So if there was any disturbance in that 5-year period, we were requiring curb to curb paving. That was the other thing, David, is that typically when an entity like PSCG goes out to bid for road work after they complete the utility repairs, the economies, they typically get a very good price. And so sometimes municipalities have been able to jump on to their pricing instead of us putting out a bid specification and getting another company to come in, and where the same company that's doing the PSCG work would be doing the work for the municipality, and you'd be able to save because they're doing a large amount of work and their price was significantly lower than if you went out to bid. So you always have to look at those factors.
So you can piggyback basically
Yeah.
onto the, yeah,
Piggyback that part.
nice, thank you.
Any further discussion? I think we all done, right? Yeah, okay, no more, okay, okay. Then we can finish, right? Well, okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, nothing, right? Okay, we did a really good meeting tonight, and I really appreciate one more time your team, and everyone have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. No, excellent.